They do not dispute the drone coming down, but they do say that drone was over Iran and not over international airspace. I want to get right to Mary Bruce. Quickly, Mary, you asked the president moments ago, would we be taking action against Iran? And he was very quick with his answer.
Well, the president said that we would be hearing something more soon. We know that he has just been meeting with Justin Trudeau of Canada in the Oval Office, and he was asked even more about his response to Iran's actions and what he plans to do about it. David, I believe we are about to hear some of that directly from the president.
This is the president in the Oval Office moments ago.
Drone was in international waters. Clearly, we have it all documented. It's documented scientifically, not just words. And they made a very bad mistake.
How will you respond, Mr. President? How will you respond?
You'll find out.
Are you willing to make a war with Iran?
You'll find out. You'll find out. I mean, obviously, you know, we're not going to be talking too much about it. You're going to find out. They made a very big mistake.
Mr. President, what are your concerns about China and the Canadians who are detained, sir?
No concerns. We'll be discussing that. It'll be one of the issues I think we'll be discussing right now with Justin.
Mr. President, the Fed made no change to the interest rate.
Say it?
The Fed made no change to the interest rate. Right?
Well, I guess they indicated they're going to be lower. Should have done sooner, but what are you going to do? Can't win them all. He should have done it sooner, but you can't win it all. And eventually he'll do what's right, perhaps. Let's see what he does.
Will you ask China to release the Canadians? Do you intend to bring them up when you meet with the
Obviously, we're very concerned about the escalation by Iran recently. We have significant presence in the area, including leading in the NATO mission in Baghdad, in Iraq. We look forward to discussing with our closest ally their perspectives on this and how we can move forward as an international community.
Will you ask China to release the Canadians?
Will you help Justin Trudeau get a meeting with Xi Jinping at the G20 next week to talk about the detained?
Well, I don't know that he's trying to meet. Are you trying to get a meeting?
We've got a lot of things to discuss.
Well, otherwise I'll represent him well. I will tell you. We have a meeting set up with President Xi, and it's
President Trump in the Oval Office just moments ago. You heard the president say he thinks Iran shooting down that U.S. drone may have been a mistake in his words. He said it may have been someone under command of Iranian government who made a mistake. I find it hard to believe that it was intentional, adding it could have been somebody who was loose and stupid. Let's get to our chief global affairs correspondent, Martha Raddatz, because it would seem from those words right there, Martha, that the president is offering some sort of a window here to perhaps to bring down this escalation.
He may be trying to do that, but Iran is ramping it right back up, as you mentioned. And the foreign minister, Zarif, tweeted just a short time ago, the U.S. wages economic terrorism on Iran and has conducted covert action and now encroaches on our territory, saying we'll take this new aggression to the UN and show that the U.S. is lying about international waters. They said from the moment their surface-to-air missile hit our very sophisticated drone that it was in Iranian territorial waters. But you heard the president, you heard the commander in Qatar saying quite firmly that is not true and that they've made a big mistake. The commander in Qatar saying this is dangerous and escalatory action. So we're getting a lot of different messages today. But as you know, David, the president has been very firm about Iran. Over the years, he has been in office saying it's a country of terror and he will not take it.
I want to underscore that key point you made there, Martha, that Iran says this was not over international waters. It was over their airspace. The U.S. very clear this morning in that statement from the Pentagon, from the region, saying that was not the case and that this drone fell down into international waters and that it could have put lives in danger. I want to bring in our senior White House correspondent, Cecilia Vega, because we know as soon as the White House heard about this, last night about 7:30 Eastern time, they did convene members of the security team with the president.
Yeah, they were reportedly, David, so concerned about what had happened that they convened this meeting in the evening, and Sarah Sanders confirmed that meeting had happened. We now know that the president has been briefed at least twice, this morning and last night. There have been a number of briefings, frankly, that have been happening. The National Security Council, very high senior level officials in that group met at the White House this morning. That included the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, General Joseph Dunford. Congressional leaders from both parties have been briefed on this. But you know, David, you were just saying this is a real test for President Trump right now, that he will have to make a decision as to what to do. It seems from his comments that he just gave in the White House that he is leaving a little bit of an opening with Iran. We also know that he has a number of hawks in his administration, senior-level hawks who have advocated for attacks on Iran in recent history. The president himself has vacillated a little bit. He has said he does not want to see war with Iran or war again in the Middle East. But I think at this point we have to wait to see what he's going to do on this. You hear his military leaders saying dangerous and escalatory attacks.
And you speak of the hawks in the administration. He also has allies over on the Hill. Senator Lindsey Graham, for one. Cecilia, said we're a lot closer today than we were yesterday, and only God knows what tomorrow brings. Senator Graham saying that the U.S. would protect Israel, and if the U.S. goes to war with Iran, that he is confident that Iran would win. Nancy Pelosi, Speaker of the House, has also talked this morning, saying there is no appetite for going to war. I think it's a dangerous situation. Let's make sure that we don't have the beating of the drum for something without the clarity of the facts involved. So let's bring in Mary Bruce, our congressional correspondent, who is at the White House this morning. And Mary, two very different statements from Lindsey Graham and Nancy Pelosi.
Yeah, David, and the president has been getting even some mixed messages from within his own party on what should come next here, while our team has been speaking with many top Republicans on the Hill who are urging caution against the use of force. You mentioned those more hawkish Republicans like Senator Lindsey Graham coming out and saying that it would be appropriate for the U.S. to use military force, and he's been encouraging forceful action. The reason that is so significant, David, is that Lindsey Graham is one of those key players on the Hill who really has the president's ear, and we heard from him just a short while ago saying that this entire situation presents a test to the president, that he will be judged by what he does next. There is no doubt that the president, I'm sure, is listening closely to those messages that he's getting from his allies on the Hill.
Yeah, varied messages from over on the Hill. Mary, talking about Senator Lindsey Graham moments ago. In fact, he talked about the past, President Obama, the previous administration, and their discussions of a red line in Syria, and said, let's not make the same mistake this time, in so many words, putting some pressure on the president to take a very close look at what he's witnessing from Iran. Let's listen to Senator Graham just moments ago. Here's what he said.
Trump has told the Iranians, you cannot disrupt navigation of the seas, you can't attack our interests or our allies. That's an unacceptable way to live in the 21st century. They are testing him. They need to do so at their own peril. If they get away with this, God help us with North Korea and throughout the world. I'm convinced that as a last resort, President Trump will stop this behavior.
Are you saying that
That's Senator Lindsey Graham just moments ago. I want to bring in our global affairs correspondent, Martha Raddatz, again. And Martha, all of this playing out amid these rising tensions and a need for leadership at the top of the Pentagon. Several roles remain unfilled, unconfirmed by the Senate. And we had the acting Pentagon chief reveal that he was out just a couple of days ago. And Martha, let's look at this video just in. This is from the Pentagon. They said this would offer an illustration of perhaps of what they saw in the last 24 hours. And again, as you're watching us here this afternoon, we are following breaking coverage of the White House and its decision-making process after we learned a surveillance mission, a drone, was shot down by a surface-to-air missile from Iran, taking down a U.S. Navy drone. The Pentagon today saying this was an unprovoked attack, that this surface-to-air missile was inside Iran. This was an effort, they say, to disrupt surveillance of aircraft in the Strait of Hormuz. And as you know, we've been reporting here at length about those oil ships that had been attacked. The U.S. saying they have evidence, in fact, that it was the Iranians. They showed that video previously of what appeared to be Iranian ships taking away some of the debris from the mine, the explosions in the waters there. The Pentagon making it clear this morning that they say this drone was a significant distance from the Iranian coastline, and they called the attack irresponsible and that it could have put lives in danger. But back to that point, Martha, that I made a moment ago, leadership issues at the top of the Pentagon, and these come at a very, very serious time for the administration.
They certainly do, and you have acting Defense Secretary Pat Shanahan and soon-to-be Acting Defense Secretary Mark Esper. That will begin this weekend on Sunday on this handoff right in the middle of what's going on right now. And we should remember that 4 tankers were attacked about a month ago in the Gulf, and that we have sent 25 or are sending 2,500 additional forces to the area, additional Patriot missile batteries, additional fighter aircraft. This was all before this happened. This was something that Central Command wanted for force protection. I'm sure that drone was part of that surveillance and that sort of force protection. And also a reminder of how sophisticated that drone is, David. That drone cost more than $120 million. was flying, they said, at about 34,000 kilometers. They say, and we'll have to keep on this, that it was in international waters, and they are certain about that no matter what the Iranians say.
And of course, that's the distinction being disputed by the Iranians, leading to this moment that we're now watching play out with you all at home today. And this, as Martha points out, was an unmanned aircraft. It cost more than $100 million. It was a Boeing, let me give you an idea, the wingspan, larger than a Boeing 737, just the size and scope of these drones. So often we think of the drones as much smaller. This was a major piece of equipment in the air at a cost of more than $100 million. And it was in the air precisely because of what you heard Martha say there, because of those attacks on oil ships in the region. I want to bring back in Cecilia Vega, because another key point here has been the effort to present evidence not only to the American people, but to the global audience listening and watching this very closely, world leaders. Many had signaled that there wasn't enough evidence, that they weren't comfortable yet, that the Iranians were definitely behind what we saw with those oil ships in recent days. We heard something a little different from Angela Merkel in the last 24 hours, the German chancellor, but big questions about whether or not they have a coalition should they take this a step forward.
And I think this is something that we've been talking about for a long time now. What will happen when the United States has a very serious international decision to make, like whether to strike on another country when credibility is on the line? And I think a lot of the president's critics would say that is certainly the case in these questions about Iran. I'm just going back to thinking back to what the president just said in the Oval Office, that he finds it hard to believe that if it was intentional, he said this, he believes that this could have been somebody loose and stupid. David, that's not what Iran is saying. Iran themselves are saying shooting down the American spy drone had a clear, decisive, firm, and accurate message. So I think some of those questions that we have been hearing leading up to today, we will continue to hear into tomorrow.
Clear dispute. Senator Lindsey Graham, I mentioned a moment ago that he spoke to reporters. You saw a little portion of that, but he went on to say that the president does not want war with Iran. As you know, we reported here the Japanese prime minister had been sent to Iran, was asked by the president, for Prime Minister Abe, to deliver a message to the Iranians to talk, to re-engage in some sort of negotiation, in some sort of diplomatic effort. And I have a little more from the president in the Oval Office moments ago, a hint perhaps that they are giving the Iranians some room here before any steps are taken. Let's listen.
I don't know. I find it hard to believe it was intentional, if you want to know the truth. I think that it could have been somebody who was loose and stupid that did it. We'll be able to report back, and you'll understand exactly what happened. But it was a very foolish move. That I can tell you.
The president suggesting it might have been someone loose and stupid, as I had mentioned earlier. As we all know, the president did tweet this morning, the Iranians reacting to the president's tweet, but that tweet came at 10:15 this morning. Iran made a very big mistake, and Senator Graham was asked about what the president had tweeted, asking, is that provoking the Iranians? And he said, no, what's provocative is to shoot down a drone. And again, as we continue to hammer home this morning, the difference here is the Iranians said that drone that was shot down was over Iranian airspace and not international waters. As we heard from the U.S. Navy, the Pentagon this morning, they say that clearly was not true, and that when the drone in fact came down and hit the water, it was in international waters, and they point out it could have put people in danger. We'll continue to follow this situation very closely throughout the day. Late news on ABC News Digital, live all afternoon, abcnews.com, and of course our entire team you just saw here will be on World News Tonight a bit later. I'll see you then. Good day.
This has been a special report from ABC News.